It is, by the way, quite obvious that this attribution of the material value of money to a complementing and supporting principle with reference to the uncertain relations is only an interpretation of processes that occur in the subconscious of the economic subjects themselves. Economic interactions take place with such admirable expediency, by subtly organized dovetailing of innumerable details, that it would be necessary to assume that they were integrated by a superior mind, operating with superhuman wisdom, if one did not fall back upon the unconscious power of adaptation of the human species. The conscious intentions and foresight of individuals would not suffice to maintain the harmony that economic activity displays alongside its fearful discords and inadequacies. We have to assume that there are unconscious experiences and calculations which accumulate during the historical development of the economy and which regulate its course. It should be remembered, however, that unconscious conceptions do not provide a satisfactory explanation, but are only aids to understanding that are actually based upon a fallacy. We arrive at determinate thoughts and actions from particular conceptions, chains of reasoning, etc. But if these consequences emerge without the antecedents, we conclude that the latter nevertheless existed without our being conscious of them. From a logical point of view, this is clearly unwarranted. Surreptitiously, we turn the merely negative fact that we are ignorant of the causative conceptions into a positive assertion that unconscious representations exist. Actually, we know nothing of the processes that produce a psychic effect without conscious antecedents, and the notion of unconscious representations, experiences, and inferences only expresses the fact that the effects occur as if they were the result of conscious motivations and ideas. The urge to explain has to rest content with investigating these processes and treating them as, unconsciously, effective causes, although they merely symbolize the real course of events. In our present state of knowledge, it is unavoidable, and thus legitimate, to interpret the formation of values, their consolidation and fluctuation, as unconscious processes which follow the norms and forms of conscious reasoning. The second argument against money as merely a symbol. The second reason for not regarding money as being only a symbol is connected with its significance as an element in exchange. Although, in principle, the exchange function of money could be accomplished by mere token money, no human power could provide a sufficient guarantee against possible misuse. The functions of exchange and reckoning obviously depend upon a limitation of the quantity of money, upon its scarcity, as the expression goes. If the proportion between the single amount and the total sum of commodities and of money is accepted as valid, then the proportion appears to be unchanged by an arbitrary increase in the amount of money and is able to retain its significance for the establishment of prices. The money fraction would show a proportionate increase of both the numerator and the denominator, without changing the value of the fraction. In reality, however, these changes do not occur in the same proportions if the amount of money is considerably increased. The denominator of the money fraction is in fact increased, but the numerator is unchanged until all exchange transactions have been adjusted to the new basis. The price, which equals the absolute size of the numerator, is therefore unchanged for the time being, whereas, as a fraction of the total sum of money, it has become much smaller. Consequently, the owner of new quantities of money, and in the first place the government, occupies a highly privileged position in relation to all sellers of commodities. The most serious repercussions upon exchange transactions will follow from this situation, particularly at the moment when the government's own revenues are paid in devalued money. The numerator of the money fraction, the price of commodities, rises proportionately to the increased supply of money only after the large quantities of new money have already been spent by the government, which then finds itself confronted again with a reduced supply of money. The temptation then to make a new issue of money is generally irresistible, and the process begins all over again. I mention this only as an example of the numerous and frequently discussed failures of arbitrary issues of paper money, which present themselves as a temptation whenever money is not closely linked with a substance of a limited supply. This is shown most clearly by an apparently contradictory example. In the 16th century, a French statesman suggested that silver should no longer be used for money, and that coins should be made from iron, because the bulk import of silver from America was depriving this metal of its scarcity. The use of a metal that becomes valuable only by official coinage would provide a better guarantee for the required limitations of the quantity of money, since the supply of money would become unlimited if every owner of silver was thereby automatically an owner of money. This peculiar suggestion shows a very distinct understanding of the fact that a precious metal is not as such the proper material for money, but only in so far as it sets a necessary limit to the supply of money. If a metal fails to do this, then it has to be replaced by another substance, the supply of which can be more effectively controlled. The preference for metal as a means of exchange is the consequence of certain functional qualities. If for any reason these are lacking, it is replaced by another currency better qualified in this respect. Owing to the poor condition and incalculable variety of coins coming into Genoa in 1673, transactions were based on bills of exchange. Today we know that only precious metals, and indeed only gold, guarantee the requisite qualities, and in particular the limitation of quantity, and that paper money can escape the dangers of misuse by arbitrary inflation only if it is tied to a metal value established by law or by the economy. The following instance illustrates how effective such a restriction is, even in controlling individual speculation. During the American Civil War, the circulation of Confederate paper money, greenbacks, was prohibited in the Western states, and although they were legal tender, nobody dared to repay in paper money a loan received in gold, by which means he could have made a profit of 150%. In the 18th century, the situation was similar in respect of the treasury bonds that the French government had issued to meet its pressing need for revenue. It was decreed that only 25% of any payment could be made in these bonds, but nevertheless, the value of the bonds soon declined to a very small proportion of their nominal worth. Such cases show the extent to which the significance of specie is sustained by the laws of exchange themselves. This does not happen only in the type of case that I have quoted so far. When the Bank of England ceased to redeem its notes between 1796 and 1819, the fall in the value of gold was only 3 to 5%, but commodities prices rose 20 to 50% as a result. Whenever a compulsory rate of exchange leaves only paper money and small coins in circulation, serious harm can be avoided only if the exchange rates show only minimal fluctuation over long periods, and to ensure this the issue of paper money must be strictly limited. This indispensable regulating function of gold, and formerly of silver, is due not to the correspondence between its value and that of the objects for which it is exchanged, but to the relative scarcity of the metal, which prevents the flooding of the market with money and the consequent undermining of the proportion upon which the equivalence of a commodity with a certain amount of money is based. The disruption of this proportion may be brought about from both sides. The excessive increase in money creates pessimism and mistrust among the people, so that they attempt to dispense with money and to fall back upon barter and promissory notes.